Okay, and welcome once again to yet another edition of the Rare Groove Revolution podcast. I am your host, Earl Holder, aka DJ Solero, and I'm here with my special guest in the house, one of the original members of the legendary soul rock group of the 60s and early 70s, Rotary Connection, Mr. Sidney Barnes. Mr. Barnes, thank you so much for coming on the show and availing time out of your very busy schedule. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, for starters, how did you originally get into music?
Originally, listening to it on the radio as I was growing up, and just it just absorbed into me. And as I grew older, my parents were very encouraging. And when they found out they were thankful that I found something that I wanted to be, because I also was an artist. I drew things, and when I started into music, and they realized they couldn't stop me from being in it because my desire was so strong, they encouraged me. And hearing doo-wop and all that sort of got me really into it. I was born in West Virginia, so I was raised on bluegrass and country music. And then I moved to Virginia, and I started listening to the pop music, and it did something to me. And I wanted to make people feel as good as I felt when I made it. I wanted to get into it so I could try to make people feel as good as I did. And I think I pretty much succeeded in ways,
Who inspired you as a musician coming up?
Singers, well, being Black, at first, it took a long time for me to hear a lot of Black singers on the radio. And because, the segregation on the radio stations and all that. And it was during the 40s and 50s. So singers like Nat King Cole on the Black side, Sammy Davis, Ella Fitzgerald, all the Black singers, of course. But there are some white singers like Mel Torme, a group called the High-Lows. And every time I heard music by anybody that sounded good, I was into it, and it sort of did something to me. So everything I heard inspired me, from country to R&B and soul, and I just got inspired, man, and I wanted to be a part of it.
So how did the Rotary Connection thing come together initially?
That's an easier question than it is an easy answer. You got a couple hours?
If you got
no. By the time I got to Chicago, where Rotary Connection first came into being, I had been with Motown, I'd been with Lieber and Stoller, I'd been in that whole New York music scene for years. I was teamed up with J.J. Jackson, the guy that did But It's All Right. I had a production company with George Clinton and Funk Brothers in Detroit. And I was really busy on the R&B scene, but I noticed that the music that was coming out of England from the rock bands, they were influenced by the American blues artists, were beginning to seep into our society, and I really got hooked up on it. Being a songwriter, I really was impressed by Lennon and McCartney's song lyrics, and the way those cats did harmony, and just the way they interpreted our music and created their own music. And I was one of the first, I imagine, Black guys who really was impressed by it. And so I wrote a song. George Clinton and I had a production company in Detroit, and we split up in early 67. I went to help a friend of mine, Andre Williams, develop a group called the Dramatics. And they were young kids. And George and I split up, but we realized that music was going something new had to happen because he wanted to get out of the Temptations kind of groove with Parliament, and didn't know where to go. And he had some ideas, but the doors weren't open for his ideas yet. So go to switch forward to, okay, so they had to riot in Detroit and I had to leave. So I picked Chicago. And I ended up in Chicago at Chess Records. And after being there for several months, I did a lot of background stuff, and I worked with Minnie Ripperton on a lot of the session background stuff there. And I was writing on, or staff writer there. And Marshall Chess came in one day. He was Leonard Chess's son, who owned the music company, who owned Chess Records. And Marshall had been out to the West Coast going to college, and he attended this this music festival, one of the first music festivals they had. I forget the name of what they called it, but that's when Jimi Hendrix came over, and Janis Joplin was on the show and all. This was just before rock broke in the States. So Marshall was very impressed by that. So when he got back to Chicago, and he asked his daddy, could he form his own label? He wanted to call it Cadet Concept and be distributed by Chess. Daddy said, yeah. And Marshall's concept was to combine the blues music that Chess was into, because they had Muddy Waters and all those guys. Combine that with gospel, jazz, classical, and rock. And he wondered if it could be done. So he said, okay, here's what I'll do. I'll get a bunch of rock records, rock songs, like by Dylan and the Cream and a few other people. And I'll get a classical arranger, and we'll do classical arrangements. And we'll get the orchestra here in Chicago to play on it. And we'll get some soul singers and some rock singers, put them together and just mix it all up. We'll call it Rotary Connection, which had a certain meaning. I'll explain to you sometime later. But it just meant combining all the musics together, Rotary Connection, whatever. I'm so sorry. And so he needed an arranger. And all of the arrangers at Chess Records, they were either busy doing somebody else's sessions, or they were just around. And Charles Stepney was one of the guys that was just around. Charles was a genius back then, but nobody knew it because he hadn't had the chance to branch out. He was basically a copyist. A copyist is a guy who, if there's a session coming up, he gets with the actual arranger and copies all of the arranger's parts on all the different sheets for the violins, the string players, the horn players, the piano players, And so Stepney was basically that. And he had thoughts of maybe leaving Chess because he wasn't able to do the jazz. He was a jazz trained and taught musician and composer, very smart man. So anyway, Marshall ran into him one day in the hallway and said, hey, how would you like to, are you busy? And he went, no. So he said, how would you like to work on this project with me? It's a new concept. And he told Stepney what it was and told him he wanted to do it with classical arrangement. And of course, Stepney said, sure, this is my chance to, show him what I can do. And so we went in the studio, and it was the orchestra, about 27 pieces. And the pop songs, we did like a Rolling Stone and a whole bunch of other great rock songs. And for singers, they needed the white sound. So they had 4 young white singers who had a little band in Chicago. They weren't very good, and they were total amateurs, but they were managed by one of the guys in the advertising department at Chess. So he said, well, use my folks. He and Marshall were friends. So he said, well, use my guys. And they sound pretty good. And they did, that singers, they weren't too bad. They had a girl called Judy Hoff. who I think is still alive in Chicago. Judy had a fantastic folk sounding voice, sounded like Judy Collins, and she was very good. But they weren't good musicians. It was like four of them. They only played like bar mitzvahs and local bars, where 30 people came in on the weekend in the Polish neighborhood, and they had little weekend bars, like we do, with that stuff. And for the soul singers, they had myself, they got Minnie, because we were doing all the background anyway. And then they got Chuck Bogsdale from the Dells, and we were the black singers in the band. I originally wasn't part of that. A guy that was my roommate called Greg Perry. I don't know whether you know Greg Perry, but Greg Perry was a very good friend of mine. He's like a little brother, and he's a very talented guy. He produced and wrote Warren Ads and all the Honeycomb stuff. And he and I had known each other since New York, and then we'd been in Detroit together. And now he was my roommate. He was staying in my apartment in Chicago while he tried to see what he could get going at Chess Records. In the meantime, he was doing like the Honeycomb on the side, going back and forth to Detroit doing that. So he came to the apartment one day and said, "Listen, Marshall Chess is putting this group together to record. And he wants me to be part of it." And he said, I'm not into that. I'm an R&B producer and writer, and I just don't feel it. So, but I know who you, Sidney, you're an all-around guy, and you're into this. You'll dig it. So go and tell Marshall you take my place. So I went and told Marshall that Greg had talked to me, and were very interested. So he said, "Well, we need some songs, you an original songs on here. Do you have anything?" And I played him when I was in Detroit, just before George and I had broken up. I had written a song in homage to Lennon and McCartney. That had a song called, I think, "She's Leaving Home." Words were great, the whole idea was good. And it inspired me to write a song called "Turn Me On," about a hippie asking for enlightenment from a higher, being. It sounded later like it was a hippie asking for drugs, but it wasn't really. If you listen to the song, you'll think that too. But it was really very spiritual song. So I played it for Marshall and sang it to him, and he flipped out because he had never heard a brother that deep into the kind of thing that he was trying to do. So of course I was immediately put into the group. And as a singer, because at that point there was no group. Usually there's a group that puts together songs and an act, and they go to a record label looking for an album to do, and then they put the album out, and then the group promotes the album. It wasn't like this time, because this was experimental. It's experimental by Marshall. So he cut the album and put it out. And it was so new and exciting and different, but good, that a lot of people didn't understand it, but the hippie population really took to it, because it was a lot of the songs that they did, a lot of Bob Dylan stuff and some other stuff that they were very familiar with. So to them, it was a rock record. And it actually kind of was more than anything else. But anyway, the record took off big time. It jumped on the charts. And so usually, when that happens, you got to get the groups got to go out and promote it. Well, that was the early days of psychedelic rock, and there were no Blacks involved in it at all. Not because of the musicians or anything, because, musicians are always open to playing with anybody that's good. But it was the promoters and the people behind the scene who were saying, they're not going to, crowds aren't going to go for Blacks in this music. We don't want, at the same concerts. The promoters are going to have problems. So the record's taken off, and requests are coming into Chess Records for people to see the group. So I think the first one was in like Wisconsin and somewhere else and nearby. because it was a regional thing. They didn't want to send a group too far at that point because they didn't know what was going on. So in the meantime, they didn't tell Minnie and I or Chuck Boxdale what was going on. And Chuck went back to the Dells. So he said, I ain't got nothing to do with this no more because this ain't my kind of music besides. I'm with the Dells, baby, So it was left me and Minnie. Minnie was a very featured thing on the album because all those high things she did was part of it catching on. People went, what is that? Is that a person or is that an instrument? So anyway, they sent out this 4-piece band of well-meaning kids who knew nothing about playing live. And how are you going to go out, send 4 inexperienced musicians out to promote a record that's got 27 musicians on it and 5 or 6 singers on it, overdubbing several times. I mean, it's a full record. And there are these, you send these babies out to promote this. Well, after we heard that they had done that, Minnie and Chuck and I, we were kidding about, they didn't want to send us out with them. They didn't want us to belong to that crowd, so we wished them luck because we had our little careers going anyway. And so we just started getting a lot of hate mail from promoters saying, don't ever do that to us again. You send us something that wasn't what it's supposed to be. I mean, it was pretty bad. They were scared to death. There were 4 people trying to produce something that was massive. Didn't work. So Marshall said, okay, he held a meeting. He said, okay, here's what we're going to do with the Rotary Connection thing. We got one more gig to do, and it's in the city. But Minnie and Sidney, I want you guys to do this with them because this guy that owns the place is a friend of mine, the promoter's a friend of mine, and I wanted it to go over well because this is home base to the whole company and the whole idea, and it's going to be a lot of people out. So we got to do something. So he said, Sidney, you're the only one in the group that has any experience. Because by then I'd been on the road with Little Richard, the Fiestas, and I'd done the whole Chitlin circuit, and I was a little older than everybody else. So I knew what I was doing. So he put me in charge of putting something together because the gig was only 2 weeks away. And when I found out what I had to work with, I shivered. But I'd done it so much in the past until I said, okay, you do this, you do this, you do. Minnie, when I first met Minnie, when she was at chess doing background, her career as a singer has shifted from being a member of a little local girls group called the Gems, which had done a few things around town, like the what's the theater in town? I forget it was. And they did a few shows because they had a record out that did pretty good, a little local R&B thing. And she was a kid. When I met her, she was 17, never done any big shows, didn't know what the heck rock, psychedelic rock was or rock was. Hadn't been around a lot of white people in her life because she was from the South Side of Chicago. And she just didn't know what was going on. And she had done that high thing that she does a few times around in the Black venues that they had done, which were little small corner clubs, they call them, or a couple of little maybe big shows. But it didn't go over too well with the Black crowd because they weren't used to that. And if you didn't sound like Aretha Franklin, they didn't want to hear you going that far out on the rim because they didn't understand that note just kind of, how you do that, but it's nice and pretty, but we don't like that because actually it didn't fit into the songs that they were doing. But she was sitting in the studio one day between takes when we were doing the Rotary Connection thing, and she just started doing it. And we were all in the control room. We go, what the heck is that? And we looked at it, it was Minnie was sitting at front of the mic doing it. She said, do that again. So she did it. And Stepney said, you got to put that on the album. She said, no, because she had gotten kind of ridiculed about it. Well, some people liked it. They thought it was cute, but it was so new to them, they didn't know how to accept it. So her reception wasn't that great from, the soul crowd about it. So when we suggested that she put it on the Rotary album, she said, I'll do it, but that's, only time I'll do it. Okay. We thought she was kidding. So when it came time to do the gig, she said, listen, I'm not doing that thing. Hey, freaked us out because that was one of our hype thing. Yeah, it was one of the great things about the album was that little voice she had. And she had never performed in front of a white crowd. She had never done that thing in front of a big crowd. And she was just scared to death because that they were going to, boo or laugh at her or say, stop that, So we said, Minnie, you got to do it. She said, I'm not doing it. I don't care what you offer me. I'm not doing it. So Marshall got a theremin. It's a little machine that when you do it like that,
the theremin,
it goes, woo, it sounds just like Minnie. Just as good as Minnie, though. So Marshall said, well, if you're not going to do it on the show, I'll bring it on the date and we'll do it at the show. And I'll come on and I'll play the thing. And we said, Minnie said, fine, I don't care, I ain't doing it. So I got him in rehearsal for about a week, and I realized I had so little to work with them. And I had a talk with Minnie, and I had a separate talk with them, and I finally got them feeling like they could do it. One of the things I said was, listen, you're not going to sound perfect with this, and you can't play that well, and you can't sing that well, but nobody knows it but you. So act like you're having fun and that you're the baddest, whatever, in town when you're doing it, because your record's taking off. Don't look scared and follow me. Whatever I do, if I'm all right, you're all right. Minnie had no idea what to do because she had never done that type of thing where she didn't know what to wear. She didn't know how to act. She didn't know what to do on stage. So I had to solve all these problems in a week. Okay. Show came and he said, Marshall said, after this show coming up that you guys are doing, Sidney and Minnie, we're going to give you guys $50 a piece to be a part of this group for these 2 nights, Friday and Saturday. And after that, forget it. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. And on paper, it wasn't supposed to work. The album was taking off. The album was still zooming up the charts, right? And the only people who weren't buying the record anymore were the people that had seen this group that they sent out to perform the thing. So, okay, we did the show at the place called the Electric Playground. The Electric Playground was a bowling alley that had been bought by a friend of Marshall's called Aaron Russo. Aaron became a big movie producer later on. But there was an influx of UK or overseas rock groups coming over to the States to promote their stuff to this new audience, Led Zeppelin, Moody Blues, but they didn't have a lot of venues to play. So that's why Bill Graham, that's one reason why Bill Graham developed the Fillmore on the West Coast because of this, and a lot of other theaters and showrooms in the United States start opening their doors to these acts because they realized that they were, going to draw a crowd because this hippie crowd was growing. It was becoming a hippie nation, and they loved the music, and the music from the British invasion music was taking over. So anyway, we did the show at the Electric Playground that weekend, and the next thing I knew, it took a little while, maybe 6 months or so, but we were good. We were opening shows for Janis Joplin and the Moody Blues and any other rock group that came over from England. They were booking us because, I'll tell you something funny. At the night of the show, we did the show, first show, and Marshall comes on. It's time for Minnie to do that thing. And Marshall comes on and he does the theremin and he's going, woo, 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 whatever, and people thought it was great. They stood up and they applauded and they went, okay, so now we know where that sound comes from that's on the record. We go backstage, after 2 standing ovations, right? We go backstage and Minnie says, you don't have to use that thing no more. I'm doing it from now on. Yeah, so I thought you would, because the crowd just went crazy. And if they had known it was her, they would probably went crazier. Another thing too was Minnie and I had never performed in that environment before. It was a whole different environment than what we were used to. We were used to the R&B scene, which was dress up in suits or clean clothes, wear a tie, whatever, hair done, and girls wear gowns, and little veil wig things. You do the Temptations or the Supremes type of thing. Well, this wasn't it. But I had made a trip down there about a week before the show, just to see what it was, because I didn't even know what it was. And when I walk in, it was a whole different thing. It was a blue light things. It was things glowing. It was some on the loudspeaker was coming the Moby Grape music, and they had a screen on stage where they had a light show and big speakers. And I mean, this was new to a brother, because I'm used to playing in little clubs or playing the Howard Theater or the Apollo Theater or something like that. But this was some new stuff, No Black people hardly would ever came there. It was like a white thing. It's like the hippie crowd. There are a few Black hippies around, but few and far between. So actually, the promoters and the label people didn't think the Black people would be accepted in it. But Minnie and I found out the moment we got into it that they wanted that. They wanted us. The crowds were kids. I mean, they were like people, music lovers. They wanted more Black folks involved in it because they know that's where the music that they were beginning to love generated. So they were real cool with it. And but Minnie didn't know how to dress. She said, what are we gonna wear? What are we gonna do? So I took her shopping. Marshall gave us a couple $100 and said, go buy some stuff to wear. So I bought some boots and a big old hat and a cape. And I told Minnie, buy that thing over there. It's a big old wig to put on, and tie-dyed gown and things. And she thought it was quite funny. If I said, dear, this is different, Minnie. You ain't gonna believe it. She said, what do I do on stage? I said, well, hey, play that tambourine, just keep it in your hand, dance around on stage like you're having fun and like you're high, and smile at everybody, and just be cool. Just do that thing every once in a while, and over time, if we have time to do it, you'll learn the way to put it. So that's what we did. So that's why the first show was fantastic. 2 or 3 encores. And the band, they thought it wasn't gonna get no further than what it was a couple weeks before, when people said we don't want to see that no more. So here we are, we got a new thing. So that's how Rotary started, and that's how it got accepted, and it took off after that. And next thing I know, like I said, we're opening shows for Joplin and Moody Blues and you name it. We played with every rock act that came over from overseas during there, and we played for a lot of them that were in the States. Sly came a few months later, but we were the first integrated psychedelic rock band on the East Coast. The Chambers Brothers, I wouldn't call them integrated because they were all Black, and they were on the West Coast too. So the West Coast had its share of integrated rock bands to a degree. They only had 2. They had Sly and the Chambers Brothers that I know, and a group called Love, but they weren't as well known. It was a new thing, and we were the first on the East Coast. So George Clinton was a good friend of mine. George and I have been through Motown and and we did Golden World Records. We got a production company together. We produced some of the fresh stuff on Parliament. We were soul guys, but we knew the music was going to go somewhere different because we wanted it to go somewhere different. And we felt like we were chosen kind of to take a part into doing that. I wasn't aware of that when Rotary, but I finally came around to being aware of that's what was happening. So there wasn't a place. George had this fantastic concept of getting his group out there with new music and new stage show and new visual act, but there was no opening. There was no companies wanting to deal with it. There was no promoters wanting to deal with it. It was just too different. You know, they were funny back then. This was during the late 60s. They you know, you see a group like Parliament Funkadelic now, back then, they didn't want to have niggas, so people aren't going to like this, you know. But Minnie and I, by us crossing over and George being such a close friend of mine, he realized that the door was now open. So that's when he called me one day. He said, Sidney, I did it. I went out and I dressed funny and I did that, and nobody jumped on me, and I didn't beat me up. I didn't get arrested. So I think we got something. So Rotary was part of giving George the okay to do Parliament Funkadelic, because we had no place for it before Rotary. So I'm glad to say we started that. I also read an article in Billboard magazine a few years ago, and I still got the articles, prized possession of mine. Sir Elton John was being interviewed, I think his 25th year or something in the music business. And the interviewer asked him what made him think that he could combine classical and rock music together and make it happen. And he said, when I heard what Charles Stepney did with Rotary Connection, I knew I could do it. So besides influencing George and his band, we influenced Elton John, who also influenced a lot of people. Also, when I moved after I moved to Chicago and Rotary had so much going on, I was tight with Maurice White. He was drummer for
Earth, Wind and Fire.
Yeah. So Maurice and I were almost as tight as me and George. And we used to sit and talk about where's music going, what we're gonna do. He knew, excuse me, he knew he wasn't that comfortable just doing what he was doing with jazz and whatever, although he loved it. He just knew something else was supposed to go there. So it was almost like me, him, and George were like chosen to do these things, right? So he knew about Rotary because, like most of the Black people at Chess Records, they had never seen us because we only played on, you know, big shows, big festivals on the road, and we touring with Joplin, and I mean that was some big doo-doo to a lot of Black people because, hey, you guys, you know, we were revered at that point because no other Blacks were doing that. There were Muddy Waters, and a lot of the big stars were on these rock shows because now the door was open for them to be revered by, you know, the rock crowd in the States. But Minnie and I were kicking butt. So Maurice, we did a show with Ramsey. We opened Ramsey, a show for Ramsey. Yeah, we opened a show for him on the South Side of Chicago when Maurice was playing for him. It was like a little Black college, and the Black kids had never seen Rotary before, but they had heard of us by then, and they were big fans. But see, Chicago was strange. I don't know whether you're hip to it, but if you're Black on the South Side, you can go on the North Side too much to see shows, no matter if it was a band or a group that you liked, you know. If they didn't come to the Regal or wherever it was on the South Side, you just didn't see them. And you didn't want to be around a lot of white people because you didn't know what was going to happen. So we did this show. You know, Ramsey's got this little quiet jazz. I mean, he's hip and he's good. And he was that night, he was just doing the Ramsey thing. And the kids came out actually to see Rotary Connection and to hear Minnie Ripperton and to see what all this Rotary Connection fuss was about. Because with Minnie and I in the band, we were one of them. You know, we belonged to them too. So we opened the show, and now we just come off a tour with Joplin. We're hot. You know, we just played a couple of the biggest festivals that they had that by that point, we were hot. And by that time we had changed band members. We'd gotten stronger guitar player, we had a keyboard player. We were good. And of course they'd been following the Sid's, lead and everything. So everybody knew what they was doing. And I had worked them out to be in a fine-tuned show group. So by the time Ramsey came on, the seats were empty because all the kids wanted to come back and meet us. And next day, Maurice called me because we'd been talking all this time about doing something. He said, Sidney, I finally realized what I want to do. Because he was trying to put a group together called Salty Pepper. And he wasn't getting a lot of reaction from people because it was an R&B thing and he didn't want to stay there. He knew the universe was telling him there was somewhere he was supposed to go besides where he was musically, but he didn't know where it was. And he said, Sidney, I know where it is now. I saw you guys and I know where it is I'm supposed to go, because now the door was also open for other soul acts to come in and do those things. Where people were more, the companies and promoters were more acceptable to do that. Before they wouldn't have listened to George or Maurice's concepts or his idea. So Maurice said, listen, I've got a great idea. Let's, you guys are integrated, but let's do a whole Black thing. You and Minnie and me and my concept together, and let's put it all together and form a group, and I'll call it Earth, Wind, and Fire. And she said, no, we're doing pretty good the way it is, and you go ahead and do your thing. So Minnie said, nah, I want to go solo, because at that time she had turned into a diva, and we had like 3 hit albums, and the shows were sellouts, and so she said, no, I want to be a solo act. And I was doing pretty good at that point with doing radio and TV commercials in Chicago. Although Rotary at that point was almost breaking up because we saw the company didn't understand how to promote us, because it was still a new thing. Although we were selling out concerts and doing fantastic things, the records are doing as well as they were at first, because we started changing the feeling of it now, everything. So Maurice kept calling and he said, Sidney, I don't want to be a singer. I want to play percussion and be in the background. I just want to produce it and write songs for it, but I want to be the drummer. And I said, no, Reese, you got to be the singer, man, because nobody can do it. I've heard you sing and you got a style. And he denied it back and back and back. And no. Finally, I think he asked Donnie to do it, Donnie Hathaway to do it, a couple of people to do it, and nobody could do it. And I said, Reese, you got to do it. So he said, okay, I'll give it a try. The rest is history.
This is for what? The formation of Earth, Wind, and Fire?
Earth, Wind, and Fire. He wanted a group. He wanted a band,
right?
But he didn't have that. It hadn't fallen into. It hadn't taken form. And when he saw Minnie and I, he knew he could put together a better band for us. But we didn't want to get back into the Black circuit because we had escaped it. Doing that Black Chitlin circuit back in the day, it wasn't fun. And we had crossed over accidentally by being in the Rotary. We were getting, they were picking us up with limos and flying us in private jets, and there were dressing rooms, there were adoring crowds. I mean, it was good. The money was better. So we didn't want to slide back into trying to build an R&B act back up together, because we knew we had to get back there and play them clubs again, and the dressing rooms were sometimes liquor cabinets or changing clothes in the car on the way to the gig and all that sort of thing. And we had no appetite for it. Plus, Minnie had a couple of offers of some big labels. She'll branch out into solo. And she just wanted to cut an album on her, which was Come to My Garden, which she actually ended up doing. I just wanted to do commercials at the time, and we saw Rotary breaking up, and Rotary finally broke up because of a number of things. The company sold, Chess sold to GRT, Leonard Chess died, Minnie by this time was just growing into stardom. You know, she cut her album there. She had self-confidence. She'd been around with white folks to know that they were cool. You know, they weren't all out to get her. And she ended up marrying one, and beautiful Jewish guy, Dick Rudolph, a good friend of mine to this day. And it's best thing that ever happened to Minnie, and probably the best thing ever happened to Dick. And they were a beautiful couple. And so I wanted to continue my musical career, but not in another group, not in another band. So that's how Rotary started, and those are the things that it affected along the way, plus other things that it affected by affecting the things that it affected, which made it pretty important because hundreds of thousands of bands that followed after George and Maurice changed the game. We changed the game. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of it. I think that's why I was put on this earth, to be a part of something that changed the game and helped to move music forward. So I wasn't just a guy out there just writing songs or singing in a band. I was in an environment that molded people's lives and careers, that by impressing other acts that were doing the same thing I was doing, who took it further. Because Maurice said, okay, I got it. He gave me one last call one time. He said, Sidney, we got Charles Stepney, and we're going to sign with Columbia. We got a big audition with Columbia Records. I think we're going to get it with Clive. And we got Jessica Cleave singing the high thing, because that's why you hear Philip and everything you hear. Just Maurice had a high voice in it because he just had to have another Minnie Ripperton in his band. He also took our stage lineup and incorporated it into his thing. And he said, I got Charles Stepney, and you got to be in it. And I said, Maurice, last time, I'm not going to do it, but I'll be willing to do anything else with you, because I didn't want to obligate myself to anything. And I just had that feeling that he was the guy to do it, and anything I could do to encourage him to continue to sing, I was going to do it. I'm glad I did, because he turned out to be a great singer. But I'm a producer, and I knew that. I knew he had it in him. I had to convince him that he had it in him, but he couldn't find anybody else to do it. So
backing track. Oh, go ahead.
Now go ahead. So that's the story of Rotary Connection and the influence that it's had.
Now, backing track, just to back
you got it
a little bit. Describe the creative work ethic of the late great Charles Stepney.
Oh, Charles Stepney. Another thing too is I don't want to take credit for it, but if I hadn't, they're going to disband Rotary, and if they had disbanded Rotary, I think Charles would have left, because it didn't. Charles was like us. It all came together because all of us were at a point where we were so different, and we were all good, and all of our additions made it happen. Now, Charles had spent the early part of his life he was a prodigy. He went to school and learned how to do very intricate, very intricate arrangements. So he was the only guy at chess. The other arrangements they had at chess were used to doing the R&B and the jazz stuff, but Stepney was different, and Rotary helped him realize that he was different, and everybody else. And then when he got with Maurice, Maurice turned him. Maurice had greater success with Charles Stepney than Rotary did, because with Rotary, Charles Marshall Chess kind of didn't know where he was going with the music, so he just kind of let Charles do anything he wanted to do. But Charles needed somebody to work with that he could listen to that knew music as well as he did. And that was Maurice. So when he got with Maurice, they worked together. And that was, the music they, came up with was fantastic. So, but Charles was a good, he was a genius. And that's all I can say. Now he's getting recognized. Strange thing, he's gone. But a few albums later, I got a call from Maurice who said, Sidney, I always wanted to sing with you. And you didn't want to answer my request to join the group. So I finally got, because see, to Black producers back in the day, having your own independent production company sanctioned by the major label you were with was a big thing. And so Maurice finally got there after so many albums with hit albums with Earth, Wind & Fire. Columbia said, okay, we're going to give you an independent production deal, produce anybody you wanted, and we'll back you. So he called me and he said, listen, I got my first independent production deal. I'm producing Denise Williams, who I knew from Gary and Nan. It was with Stevie. And she's got her own songs. Stepney's going to arrange it. And I want you and me and Denise to do all the background on the singing. And you better not say no, because this is the last time I'm going to call you, ask you to do anything. And he said, I'll pay you good. I'll bring you out here and it'll be with Stepney. You and Stepney be like old times. And because Minnie had passed away by then, and Denise had that Minnie thing going, and we all wanted to be around somebody who had that same vibe and that same feeling. And she was a good friend of Minnie. So we figured it'd be a new homecoming for all of us. So I ended up doing Denise Williams' first 3 albums, the first 2 with Stepney. And then Stepney died, and Tom Washington did the next. But I did her first 3 albums, and on that first album, the first single called "Free." I know I just got to be free.
Yeah.
Right? Well, that's me, Maurice, and Denise singing background on that album, and I am very proud of that album because just as much as Maurice wanted to do harmony with me, I always wanted to do harmony with him after he realized he could sing good, and. So that was a million-selling album for him. Also, when George got his first independent production deal, for his gratitude and our friendship, because I was always on everything else he did, he called me and I flew in and I did the Mothership Connection album with him. That was a big day, So I had the privilege of working with my buddies after they made it big. I was a part of them making it big. And I was on there selling singles and albums, and that's the name of that tune.
Now, it's been said, well, not so much that it's been said, but the songs LP by Rotary Connection has been considered arguably the band's finest album, a masterpiece.
Not songs. You mean Black Gold is the Sun album?
Oh no! That's the Hey Love album back in '71. Right?
Hey Love, that was the only album by Rotary that I wasn't on, and that's my favorite Rotary album.
Yeah, but I was.
Yeah.
Oh, and we're gonna get
Songs
to that.
Is good. Yeah, Songs is a good album. Everything wasn't charting the way the first one and the second one did. So they're making an attempt. Marshall was making an attempt to get back into that first album feeling by doing a lot of covers. He did another Dylan tune, All Along the Watchtower, Respect. I think he did Respect on that. We're Going Wrong. Yeah, yes, Sunshine Your Love, We're Going Wrong, a few other things. So it was a good album. It was a very good album.
What was the creative process? I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
The creative process at that point, because that was like our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th album, maybe. The way it always was, Marshall knew what he wanted to record and how he wanted to record it. And by that time, Charles knew what kind of arrangements to give us. The most I am proudest of that album is that the song "We're Going Wrong," Minnie hit some notes on that song on that album that I don't think any human has ever sang, that has voice that note has ever come out of any human being before. And she was incredible on that album. And we had fun on it. And yeah, I'm very proud of that album. It's a good album.
What about the first album, the self-titled 1967 debut album from Rotary Connection, the one that has the song that would later on be used for Bonita Applebum by Tribe Called Quest? How do you feel about that? Were you on that album first and foremost?
What song was that?
Memory Band, I believe it was.
Memory Band. Okay.
Memory Band. Yes.
Yeah, I was on that first. Yeah, I was on that first album. That's how that's how we started. With Minnie and I on that first album as background singers. We were just hired to do some background singing, and we ended up, being the stars of taking over the act and making it happen. Oh no, I was on every album Rotary did except the Hey Love album. And Minnie was on the Hey Love album. I quit because of a dispute about publishing, and Minnie didn't want to do the album because she was going solo, and she didn't want to do it without me. And it's a good album. It's a very good album. Black Gold of the Sun was the biggest hit I think Rotary had without, didn't have any vocals on it, but another one of Charles Stepney's genius arrangements. But yeah, what was the question?
No, it's okay. I was just basically going to ask you, because I was going to actually segue into my next question, because earlier on during the conversation, you had mentioned about like the various concerts and festivals that you guys played. And I personally have the vinyl version of Rotary Connection's live performance of at the Texas International Festival in 1969. How was that experience like for you and the band?
They had originally asked us to do, which we were on tour with Jethro Tull in Louisiana, and our management company called and said, "Listen, they got this thing going on up in New York, up in Woodstock, and they want you guys to do a show with them. We can get you on. We can get you there. The only way we can get you there is to fly you in by helicopter. We don't know whether you're gonna get paid for it or not, but it's gonna be a big thing, so it's gonna be worth something. And we don't know how we're going to get you out. So if you want to do it, because it's going to be a memorable thing. It's going to be filmed in the biggest thing, the biggest festival, because we've been playing a lot of festivals. We do with Sly and Family Stone, Janice, Moody Blues, Canned Heat, Eric Burton, Animals. We've just been playing a lot of festivals. So we said, well, we turned on TV, and we were in the dressing room after we were at the hotel after the Jethro Tull show, getting ready to leave. And we turned on the TV and we saw the news and we saw that mud. And we realized that we were tired. And because we had one of the managers that just send us anywhere and everywhere. And they were using us. In other words, they ended up driving Ferraris and we were still catching a bus when we were home. That's just how much they worked us and how much they cheated us out of our money. So anyway, we turned down Woodstock. Instead, they said, we'll fly you up to Michigan. You'll do a show with Albert King, Iggy Pop, John Sebastian. And they got 2 little planes waiting. We'll fly you over Lake Michigan and you'd be home. And we said, that's fine. Because Minnie says, I got to take a bath. Because they told us already, you're not going to be able to take a bath at Woodstock. So Minnie was very particular about that, and I don't blame her. Because she was a delicate young lady and a perfect angel, by the way. And so she said, no, if I got to take a bath, I'm tired. I want to go home. We've done enough festivals, blah, blah, blah. So by the time we realized that we'd probably made a mistake, they came to us with the offer a little bit later, about a month or 2 later, to do the Texas International Pop Festival. And of course, it was supposed to be better organized, so we didn't turn it down. And A lot of big acts, almost as many as Woodstock, but they didn't film it. It wasn't sponsored good. It just didn't turn out good enough. And the song that we did, which was that you probably got on, that you mentioned, they recorded it, and we're doing Stormy Monday. There's a long story to that too. But in the middle of Stormy Monday, they wanted us to promote this new song that we were putting out called We Shall Be Free. A little story behind that one too. Minnie and I didn't want to do that, but they talked us into it. We did it. It broke up the feeling of the song. It wasn't the same. It's the only live recording we have of our shows, and it's not as good as we wanted it to be. So we got a little discouraged with the whole thing. And I think a year after that, maybe soon after that, Minnie said, I'm leaving. Yeah, I'm doing my solo thing. I said, well, I'm leaving too. And so we enjoyed all the shows we did, especially the pop festivals, because there were thousands of people. There were like 60,000 people at the Texas International Pop Festival. And, we had, over the years, we had gone from playing in front of, in the R&B thing, maybe 40, 50 people a night, to better gigs with the beginning of Rotary, which may be 100 people a night, to tens of thousands of people a show. So we had really, really, really grown. Minnie by this time was an experienced diva. I mean, she had people following her all over the country with presents and gifts and accolades, and I was so proud of her. And then I was getting my little thing on, I'm a little rock star. And but the Texas International Pop Festival, I think, was probably the biggest festival we played, besides one we did in Vancouver about a year before, which was really good. But everything we did with Rotary is I treasure, because it was a whole new thing for all of us. And I'm glad we got into it, and I helped give everybody a chance to succeed. And we had fun. But it ended up like everything else, like every other act. We ended up at the tax man's office with him saying, well, we got, you owe us. You guys owe us a lot of money because your manager didn't pay your taxes. So we automatically broke up then, So, but it was a good run, man. It was a really good run. And I was very surprised that years later, I get on the computer and they're selling Rotary Connection albums, and they're still doing it, and I still get checks from Universal. So
very good.
It was a good move.
Very good. Very good. As a band, did Rotary Connection tour with other Chicago bands like Baby Huey and the Babysitters?
No, because Baby Huey and the Babysitters, by the time we got going, had disbanded. Shaka was more or less following one of the little local acts following us around. Minnie was 18, Shaka was about 18, and Shaka was another one that was inspired by us. See, I had an apartment in Chicago overlooking I was the only one that had money and could get my own place. So I had a big old bachelor pad. Nowadays you'd call it a condominium. But I was the only black dude in this white folks building, and my door was always open to young acts that I invited in. And Shaka, Donny Hathaway, Maurice, George, they would all, when they were in town, they'd all come through. Shaka lived in town, she was always passing through. Donny lived in town, he was always passing through, and there were a few others. And they'd just sit around and talk, and they had a place to be themselves because they were different. Shaka was one of those acts that at first people didn't want to hear, or companies weren't excited about it because she was singing loud and they didn't hear, nobody else was doing. This is funny back then, if nobody else was doing it, nobody wanted to take a chance on it. You almost had to force people to listen to it. And when we broke through, we opened the door for people like Shaka and all those, young people who before couldn't get any recognition, and all of a sudden everybody wanted to hear him, Donnie used to sit up at my place and we talked for hours, because chess was discouraging him from becoming a singer because they wanted to keep him as a keyboard player and a session singer. So he'd come up, we'd talk for hours, and he had a buddy called, I think it was Rick West, I forget his name, but he was a musician. He used to travel with Donnie, and they just come by. And so Donnie came by one day. He said, "Sidney, I got this song called The Ghetto, and I'm taking it to New York, and they're interested." And the next thing I saw, he came by the house. He's crying. He said, "I got a deal. They're putting the thing out, cutting the album." Next thing I know, he brings the album back. So it was that kind of crowd. And I'd come off the road with Rotary, and my door would be open. So there'd be like 5 or 6 people hanging out in my apartment, cooking for other artists or writing songs and making. So I always like that little workshop feeling, And so in New York, in my little workshop, you had people like Gloria Gaynor and George Clinton and a few other people, And so wherever I go, I do that, even by the time I got to Chicago, it was happening again. So they were all hanging out in my crib. And by that time, I was like a revered guy because I was with Rotary Connection. We were doing gigs and music that the other Black acts couldn't do or weren't doing at that point, and they wanted to do it. So I coached them. I let them know it's okay to continue to pursue it. And that's where Shaka kind of developed into her rock thing, because our managers, after we broke up, took over Shaka, and they had her little band. And one day I'm living in California after they had a couple of hit records, and manager called me and he said, "Listen, I got a great idea. How about you and Shaka fronting this?" What was the group called? Shaka? What was the group they had that she had?
Rufus.
Rufus. He said, "You and Minnie? Now it'd be you and Shaka." I said, no. They already established. They're not going to accept me. That the group isn't going to really accept me doing that. Shaka would have, she liked it. But I said, nah, it ain't for me. Plus I'm still trying to be a solo act, and I go to the concerts and hang out, But no, like Baby Huey had already broke up. There weren't too many integrated rock bands around at that time when Rotary first started. That's why Rotary had a weird time, and the people didn't think it would work. But after we did it, a lot of them popped up. But it still was it's a gradual thing of integrating, Blacks and the whites in bands together at that time in Chicago. So for a long time, Rotary was the only integrated rock band that was successful. And all the other bands that came after us were basically all Black or they're all white. But we all got together, we all understood what was happening. But,
what are some of your memories? Yeah, what are some of your memories like with like performers with some of your peers that you went out on the road with, like Janis Joplin or Jimi Hendrix or Sly and the Family Stone?
Oh man, they all dug it because this just opened the door. This just made us more recognizable as artists. We were finally being accepted in the crossover. Minnie and I didn't realize that we were crossing over, but we crossed over. And that's every, Black act's dream, is to sell enough records or get hot enough, whatever, on tour to cross over, because there's more money over there. The gigs are better, people treat you better, and there's more opportunities come to you to do more things. So the peers, like I said, that's what inspired Maurice, that's what inspired George, that's what inspired hundreds of other young acts, who said, well, if they're doing it, we can do it too. And look at all the acts that Parliament Funkadelic and Earth, Wind and Fire inspired. They weren't integrated, but there were bands that before us weren't accepted. They weren't accepted, or if they were, They were only accepted by the Black crowd, only being played by Black radio. You know, when we came in the game, there was no FM radio. You know, so there we were on AM radio, and then the FM came in. We were all over FM radio because we were a hippie act. We were rock and roll. So we helped fuse the East Coast frame of mind to accepting for Black folks accepting rock, and for white folks accepting Blacks into rock. Then Sly came in, and when Sly came in, he just solidified the whole thing. The reason why Sly didn't influence Maurice that much, because it was more funk than Maurice wanted to deal with. Maurice wanted the clean sound like Stepney was giving us. I'd say Sly more or less influenced George as much as we did, or maybe even more, because they had that heavy rock sound. But yeah, George and I were best buddies. That's like my little brother. We've been friends since the early 60s, late 50s. So we were in Motown together. So we knew what each other liked and what each other wanted. And I always tried to inspire him because I knew he was one of the baddest little dudes that I ever met. And he always had me work with him because he knew I was one of the baddest little dudes that he ever met. And we were about the same age. He's a few months younger than me. So we were always inspiring each other, and we love each other as brothers, as a matter of fact. And we still talk. We still plan on doing things. He's coming in town in a couple of months, and I'm going to definitely see him because I think this is his farewell tour. And I love the brother deeply. And he was one of the most talented men I ever met in my life, and I'm glad to call him my brother. And Maurice, several months before he passed, he called me and he said, "Let's do something." I'm going, "I don't know, man. I'm out here." At that time, where was I? At that time, I was somewhere, and I said, "No, I can't do it," because I just I knew he wasn't well. And but anyway, I enjoyed talking to him. I always enjoyed talking. Now I'm trying to hook up with Verdine because I hadn't had a chance to holler at Verdine. Or Verdine, when I first met him, was a little kid, well, tall little kid. And he said, "Uncle Sid, teach me how to sing. Teach me how to sing." I said, "No, man, if you ain't got it, you ain't got it. I do not know how to teach you to do it. But you just keep up with that bass. Keep up with that bass." And next thing I know, look at him now, man. I'm so proud of my boys. Shit.
How do you feel about all of the rappers and hip hop producers that have sampled from the Rotary Connection catalog over the years?
Thank God for people, kids, producers, writers, whoever they are, that listen to our music, liked our music enough to want to expand on it, share it, put it on their stuff. George and I talk about this a lot. We're so glad that we, drained over into the younger generation, and I was surprised when I found out some people had sampled some Rotary stuff. I wasn't surprised to find out that some people had sampled some of the stuff I did with George. But hey man, I love music of all kinds. I know. See, I've been in the business since the early 60s. I've seen changes in music. I've seen how trends change and how people's thoughts towards it and against it affect it, and how it changed it. And I've been a part of a lot of those changes. So I don't mind people borrowing on something that I do to expand something they do. That's what I was put here to do, is to music, you got to share it. You don't just do it and you said, "I don't want nobody else recording, I don't want nobody else sampling, I don't want." No, you got to share music, man. Music's like love. You got to share it with somebody for it to be worth something. And that's what's been happening, and I've been a part of that. And every time I can hear something that I did or a good friend of mine did that's shared by a rapper or a singer or a producer or whatever, I'm for it, and I love a lot of the rap stuff that's going on there. I like what the producers are doing more than I do what a lot of the artists are doing, because that's mostly the rap thing has become more of a producer's game than an artist game. But back in the day, it was an artist thing, and but now it's the producers. They got some pretty cats are doing some pretty great things. I'm on the computer now doing music, writing songs to tracks, and people are sending me from Australia and Japan and everywhere, people that have studios, young kids or grown-ups that have studios that can do tracks, but they're not songwriters. So they admire me for my track record of songwriting. So they're sending me tracks. I'm writing songs to it. And I got about 40, 50 songs that I'm getting a deal for publishing wise, and I'm cutting them all in on it to expand music. And going back to another thing about Elvis, Elvis was a huge influence of mine. And I realized over the years, I've heard people talk about Elvis and call him names and say things about it. And I realized that you don't steal music. Going back to people like Louis Armstrong, you don't steal music. You hear it, you love it, and if you can emulate it or encapsulate it into what you're doing, do that. But in doing that, you're only going to create another kind of music. And that's what happens with guys like Elvis, who loved soul music. And when he did it his way, it was rock and roll. And I wouldn't say he sold the music. He just loved it so much he wanted to do it himself. And it was something else, the Beatles, the Stones, They asked the Beatles and the Stones, well, how did y'all find your sound? And they said, we found it from those records of those black acts that you guys over in the States didn't want to listen to. So you sent all the records over here and we heard it and fell in love with it and heard it was some of the greatest stuff we'd ever heard. So we wanted to be a part of it. And by being a part of it, it created a new kind of music. So that's all it is, man. People gotta look, people gotta stop being so stuck up and stuff, Yes, music just evolves, It can't stay the same. You still got people who only want to hear, only want to deal in doo-wop, only want to deal in rock, or only want to deal in R&B. That's fine, But some people just want to put them all together and try to do something, And that's the kind of cat I am. That's why all the youngsters always gravitated to me, because I never was stuck in one thing. I always wanted to see what we can do new, move it on. So that's all that was about.
What is your favorite Rotary Connection album and why?
I don't know. They were all my favorite because it was a new era. It was a new time. I wanted to move on. I wanted to be a part of something that shaped something. And each Rotary album helped shape some other acts that heard it and said, I like what they're doing. Let me try to do that, or let me get involved in that. It gave Minnie the opportunity to develop. It gave me the opportunity to develop. It gave the other guys that were in the band originally, and some of them stayed through the whole thing. It gave them a purpose. It made better musicians out of them. Every album gave something. And it gave Charles Stepney more. Each album gave him more confidence in what he was doing. So every nothing's my favorite. Some songs by other people are, but nothing that I do with anybody is my favorite, because I'm going to love it because it's like a child of mine. Anything I'm a part of, it's got part of me in it, and I love it. So,
okay. And what was you played, you and the Rotary Connection band played both Bill Graham's Fillmore East and Fillmore West back in the 60s.
Oh, we didn't play Fillmore West.
Oh, okay. So
we did
Fillmore East.
Just right? The East.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I stand corrected. How was that experience like?
It it was like all the others. By that time, we were rock stars, and we played. We headlined for Sly and the Family Stone and Clarence Carter and his band. But the funny thing about it is, we had a little reputation in New York, but they hadn't seen us too many times, and we had a little following there. But so that's why we were to open the show at the Fillmore. Then Clarence Carter and his band were to come on, and then Sly. Well, the way bills usually work is the best act last, and next to the best act is in the middle, and kind of the throwaway act is first. So it's happened to me before, and because I know the business and I know shows so well right now, I didn't like opening the show. I didn't mind, because I never mind opening a show. That's a fun time for me, because then you're really showing what you got. And then it gives you time to go change clothes, sit down, and see the rest of the show. But Bill Graham calls us after the first show, and he said, "Listen, there's no way Clarence can follow you guys, because we played with Sly a dozen times before that. So it was always a pleasure working with my little buddy Sly, and seeing how he did. When we had to play the Fillmore, I went there. I always go to a gig. If I'm in town, I'll go early, and I'll just sit and I'll watch the other guys warm up, and I'll sit there and I'll watch Sly and Stone warm up, and it was like watching the James Brown show. And I said, that little dude they gonna whip us to death, but we got something for him. So, like I said, we played many shows before, and that first night, I just pulled out all the stops. And like Minnie said when we first started, "But what do I do on stage?" You do anything you feel like doing now. We couldn't do that with the R&B stuff. You had to stay informed, because I was with the Fiestas one time. We were on opening shows for Little Richard. So it had to be choreographed. Everybody had to be, but this way you had to do anything you want. She said, "What should I do?" I said, "Do anything you want." That's how George and Maurice got that feeling about they wanted to do this, because now they could do anything they wanted. I sit down in the middle of the stage. I was one of the first brothers to do all this crazy stuff on stage. And everybody else went, "Okay, now we can do it too." So, the Fillmore was great. So Bill said, "Okay, I want you guys to come. From now on, I want Clarence to open the show, his band, because ain't nobody can follow y'all. And so y'all play with Sly." So Clarence got insulted and left the show. So that left us and Sly. And it was a hell of a night the next night. We put on a heck of a show. And because we were always trying to top him, and of course he had to come out and work harder. But we'd always leave the stage pretty smoking, man, because, but by the time I got through jumping up and down, doing my thing and running up and down the aisles, and Minnie come up and looked so pretty and doing her little thing, and we had the band just right the way we wanted them, and everything was, So Bill arranged the show so that we were before Sly. Now, when I was at the Fiestas, the same thing happened. They had us opening the show. Two other acts would come on. Then Gladys Knight and the Pips would come on, and then Little Richard would come on. And at one point, Little Richard said, "Well, y'all not warming the show up enough. We're gonna take you off the show." So I had to talk with my fellas. This was Fiestas. They had a group. They had a record out called "So Fine, So Fine." Yeah, big record. But they weren't great show people. So anyway, I worked with them. The next night, Richard called another meeting, and he said, "Okay, I decided what I'm going to do. I'm going to put you guys on just before the Pips come on, because y'all know what y'all did, but you're too hot now to put, these next two acts and follow you. I'll let them come on first, and you guys come on, and and it's just little tricks I'd learned that I taught the guys and told them to do. And so anyway, it ended up being us, the Fiestas, Gladys Knight and the Pips, and then Little Richard. And there it was us and Sly. So it was fun. And playing the Fillmore was a treat, because we had the highest respect for Bill Graham, because as a a promoter. He had always done great things and integrated, make sure his shows were integrated, make sure any blacks that were there, came there to see the show or were on the show, were treated really good, you know, which a lot of promoters are still getting used to. But Bill was a good guy and he paid us good. And I'll always be grateful for him for that. And he was a good showman. But yeah, it was like playing the Apollo. I never played the Apollo with anybody, but playing the Fillmore East was almost as good as playing the Apollo.
And after Rotary Connection broke up, did you and Minnie Ripperton ever collaborate after Rotary Connection ended?
Minnie and I, well, Minnie was like my little sister. We were even engaged for a short time for a while. But because when I met her, she was 18 and never done anything major. And we, after 2 years of working on the road, 2.5 years of working on the road together, you know, we were pretty close. And she had developed by then, following my lead, of course, into a heck of a performer. So after Rotary, she said, well, I don't know if I can, you know, she had to go on the road. She had Loving You. So she said, I want you to go on the road with me and be one of my background singers and continue to give me the, you know, the energy that you've been giving me for the last few years, because I don't want to do it without you. And so I did a lot of shows with Minnie as her background singer, sometimes as her only background singer on some major shows that she did to promote Loving You. We toured with Teddy Pendergrass, we toured with Seals and Croft, Al Green. She did some shows with Dolly Parton, you know. We did Vegas. Is it Sahara at the Vegas with the Smothers Brothers? We did a bunch of shows, and I was always usually, if I wasn't busy, I was on the road with Minnie as her backup. And I stayed at the house when I lived out of town and visited. I was, you know, like the godfather to her kids. And Amaya's grown up now. She's a little movie star. And she's called me Uncle Sid. And just friends with the family. We were tight. She was like my little sister forever. I was at the funeral, crying my eyes out. And yeah, we always worked together. She said, Sidney, as long as I live, I'm gonna take care of you, because you taught me a lot of stuff. And 2 years after that, she passed, you know, so. But I know if she's still been around, we'd still be working together. And I talk to her husband a lot, and when I can, and he and I are tight. So, you know, Minnie's always in my heart and always on my mind, and it's my girl.
Have you gotten a chance to stay in contact with the other members of Rotary Connection? Because I know there are only a few remaining surviving members left, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, as far as I know, the Judy Hoff is in Chicago. Beautiful lady. She's still singing and teaching music and hanging out with musical people, but such a beautiful voice. She didn't stay with us too long, I think 2 albums. And then there was a guy named Kenny Venegas, who was a drummer who was living in Florida now. I'm not sure. I haven't heard from he or his wife for years. And he wasn't too well last time I talked to him. I doubt if he's still around. And all the others have passed away, you know. And but yeah, I visited them and talked to them, and we always stayed in touch for years after Rotary, and sit and talk like a bunch of old people sit and talk about the good old days, you know, when we were rock stars.
About Phil Upchurch, you still keep in contact with him?
Well, I don't consider Phil one of the Rotary Connection. Real Phil was on that the last album wasn't really Rotary Connection. The last album, there's a strange story with the last album. One of the reasons why I quit, because it was just totally different. And one reason why Minnie didn't want too much to do with it, because it's totally different. But on the last album, it was just a bunch of studio musicians. It was too clean. Black Gold of the Sun was a star song, was a star arrangement. But you had ladies like Shirley Walls, who is an incredible singer. She had some solo stuff on it. There's a guy, I forget his name. A lot of people thought it was me, and he's on it. It was a good album. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that one.
Okay. Well, what do you?
But yeah, I've talked to, but I've talked to a bunch of them since then and hung out with them, gone to their homes, and we're always family.
Well, what are you up to these days?
Oh boy. Well, as you can see, I got my wall full of memorabilia. I've got an album out on Spotify, Sidney Barnes, a Good Time Band. I'm putting out a new album. See, I write songs constantly. So I got so many songs, I'm putting them all out now because I'm 81 now. So I'll leave you in a minute, you know. But before I go, I want to try to get all my songs, my original songs, out in the market so there's nothing left hanging around. So I've got a 10-song album I'm putting out called Old Man, New Plan. I got my album I put out called Peace, Love, Sex, Wars, and Video Games. I've got a jazz album I'm releasing with just standards on it. And I've got a lot of singles I'm putting out. So, and I just started working with this new country rock band out where yet some young guys out where I just moved to out in the country. And because I moved here and wife and I bought a big house and she passed away in November. And so I'm still here and I'm starting to, people are starting to contact me to help me, kind of get their things together. And that's what I do. So I'm welcoming all of the fun that I can do. Like I said, I got musicians that write me, sending me material. As far as guys like Phil Church, and I emailed Phil, we emailed each other several years ago and I haven't heard from him since. And any of the other guys, except the guys that were in the group originally, I never was too tight with. But Phil I was, but we weren't that tight. But all the old Rotary guys and gals, they're all gone, and I'm being kept here to keep the music flowing, and I'm doing my best.
I'm sorry, not to cut you off. So you're basically like the last original member around?
No, like I said, Judy Hoff.
Oh, Judy. Oh, okay, Judy. Okay.
Yeah, I'm the last long-term guy that's still around. I'm also one of the last of the 60s soul men around. I'm in a pretty good category, and I'm the last of a lot of things now. So I got to be careful where I step and what I do. But I went over to England and did some shows, and Rotary's big over there. I'm big over there. I got major fans over in the UK who love the stuff I did in the 60s as a solo act and love the stuff I did with George. So every time I go over there and do a concert, I have to do a lot of the things that I wrote that other people recorded, which is their favorite. So it's called Northern Soul. And they are avid fans. They love me. I love them. And thousands come out to our shows. And I got something here. Let me see for a minute here. I should have had it ready, but this is my autobiography.
Oh, okay. Solid ground.
Standing on solid ground. What happened was the first time I went to England, they pulled me in the studio, one of the big producers over there, and they, used to be Motown, because Motown is like Mecca to them. And used to be in Motown. So let's go in the studio and record something that, the way you guys used to do it. So we went in with a crowd of folks to watching, and we did this incredible song called Standing on Solid Ground, which he had the track for, and we wrote in about 25, 30 minutes. It came out, didn't do anything for a while, and then he put it on vinyl and it just busted wide open. So that's why I named my my book Standing on Solid Ground, paying homage to my Northern Soul fans and family over in Europe, over in England. And I love them dearly because they love me dearly, and it shocked the heck out of me, you know. Because when you go so many years and you don't have a hit record or whatever, and you think it's been all in vain, and then all of a sudden you go over the ocean, and there's a whole crowd of people waiting on you because they love you so much. I thought I was James Brown when I stepped off that plane, man. You know. So and they knew everything I'd done. They do their research. You know, I had heard, you know, guys like the old jazz guys talk about how people over there revere our music, but to hear it from the people over there, you know, and what it meant to them and how they loved it, and why didn't Americans feel the same way they did about it, you know, it's quite interesting.
Well, in closing, you have, like, what advice would you give to anyone in the music industry?
Just keep doing it. Don't fight it. If the doors aren't opening, don't think they're not opening. Just do what you do, you know. Take advice and don't get upset if somebody doesn't like your stuff, because not everybody likes everybody's anything. And because some people write some songs and if people don't like it or whatnot, they take it personal. But a lot of people don't hear it like you hear it. Sometimes it usually takes, if something's really good, it takes time for people to get used to it. You know, because I've been through that. I went, what? That sounds like doo-doo. That's terrible, yeah. But if you open your mind and your ear to it, after a while, you realize that it's new. You didn't like it because it wasn't what you were used to doing it. So to all the new writers and singers and rappers and whatever, if you're doing it, music's good for you, man. Music's like vitamins. You know, the more you do it, the more. Look at me. I'm like, I do it every day. I can't not do it. You know, and I'm 81 and I'm still doing it. So my advice is just keep doing it. You know, love what you're doing, and if the urge hits you to move in another direction, go there. You know, there's a safety net, you know, over there waiting on you. So, you know, do what's in your heart. And don't let nobody tell you it ain't good because they don't like it.
True. Words of wisdom, words to live by. But before I forget, before I go and before I close it out, it's just another question that I want to ask you. Are there any standout memories that you recall during the recording of any of the Rotary Connection albums over the years? Like any memories that stand out during the recording process of any of those albums?
No, they were all fun. Yeah, when I wrote this song, the song that really got Marshall excited about me initially being in the group was when he asked me if I had any songs, and I played him the song I had written called Turn Me On. And when I played it, I played a little piano. And I was such a big Paul McCartney fan that when I sang it and played it to him, he closed his eyes and it sounded just like Paul McCartney singing it. You know, by that time I'd been trained how to sell a song. So writing that song changed my life as a writer, more or less, just took me into another realm. And it also helped me solidify my place in the band as a writer-singer. And I was one of the first Black guys that I knew, or all my friends knew, who had crossed over to writing any kind of psychedelic rock sounding songs. It's called Turn Me On, and it's a beautiful song. But I'd been used to writing, you know, I was writing with George in Detroit months before that, and we were writing about I Bet You, and I'm into something I can't shake loose, and you know, all those R&B stuff, you know. But now I just went left field, and that let my buddy George know I can go left field too. Sidney just went left field and got over it. So all my friends went left field after I went left field. I was glad that I went to left field first. And it was scary because I didn't know where I was going. But I went there and helped open the door for people. Every song I do is precious. Everybody I work with is precious. Every part of this journey has been precious. I feel like I've been chosen by the universe to do this and advance music and to help the music flow and everything. So, I mean, I go to YouTube and I see things on there that I didn't even put on there, that other people thought enough of my music and stuff I've done, my commercials, the music, everything, and to put it on YouTube. And so I'm very proud and very pleased of the, of what I've contributed to something that I love so dear.
That being said, Mr. Barnes, Mr. Sidney Barnes, thank you so much for once again availing time out of your schedule to come on the program. And you're definitely welcome to come back anytime you want. Thank you.
Pleasure was mine. Pleasure was mine, Earl. You take care of yourself. God bless you. And keep on keeping on, baby.
Thank you very much, bro. You take it easy. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Okay. Good night.